I've actually been working with another group about getting the People's Court set up and land patents and that sort of thing, because the authority, no, it's okay, leave the lights. That's
well, just the one side.
That's okay. Yeah. Because the authority rests with us, not them, and so how do we start making sure that we can hold them accountable for what they're doing, and you know what they're doing in the courts and that kind of stuff is unethical in my opinion. So we've been actually researching how we can actually get our own courts set up, and so what I'm going to talk about tonight is courts. Okay. Now, for those of you who have attended the 8 modules that I went through those 8 modules, we kind of went through their power structure. Okay, you have the Queen up on top with her minions, Committee of 300, and the 3 city-states and that kind of stuff. Then we have the Governor General, and then the Supreme Court, military, Parliament, Office of the Public Guardian, and then the Lieutenant Governor. And then under that is all the corporations that they're using to manipulate and control us. And we're all under there supporting this great big huge monolithic structure. And does everybody understand that pyramid top-down structure that's in place?
I comprehend it.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to put this on the order of creation list. We have the creator, obviously, who created us, and then we created the governments and the corporations. So technically speaking, that whole power structure belongs below that red line. Okay.
That's the scarlet thread.
Sure, if you want to view it that way. I just picked red because it's easy to see. Okay. But like I talked about in February 3rd when I talked about that Michael Schmidt case, that's all public. Okay. And because it's all under Admiralty jurisdiction, that's the military. Okay. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but because it's all operating under Admiralty law. Okay. And as we found out in that court case, they make a lot of assumptions. They assume that if we're operating in the public, we're vulnerable and that we need protection. Okay, it's kind of a summary of that DVD that Jesse has there. Okay, and they're all operating under limited liability. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fill in that top part now. Okay, Exodus 18:25. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads. I underline that because I'm going to look at that word. Over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. Okay. Now, when you're looking up words in the Bible, you can't just use the definition of the word that we use today. Okay, we just had that discussion here a few minutes ago. Okay. So there's actually a thing called Strong's Concordance, which actually ties all these words back to the original Hebrew and Greek. And they also have those definitions of those words. Okay? I found through my journey through all this is that the Bible has been mistranslated and misconstrued so many times I don't even trust it. So what I do is I go back and I research the original words. Okay? Here's one of them, heads, I underlined. Okay? And here's the definition of this word. The number in the brackets is the reference number back to the original Hebrew word of Rosh, if that's how it's pronounced. Okay, and Rosh is defined as this. Okay, there's many different definitions. Now, the thing with these words is you also have to put it into context. In what context is this word being used? If you can figure that out, then you can figure out which definition to use. So in the context of this last passage, it means chief, head of a man, or a city, or a nation, or a place. Okay. Rulers, which translates to Sar, means a chieftain, a leader, elders of representative leaders of people. Okay? So do they mean captains, like what some Bibles define it as? No, in my opinion, that's out of context. It's there, okay? Captain is there, but that's in a military context. Okay, that's important to know because we're going to talk a lot about military tonight. Okay, and in my opinion, that's why some Bible translations translated that word to captain rather than elder or chief.
Bring it to that realm.
Okay, bring it into the realm of the military.
Just a little bit of leaven.
Okay. Does everybody follow me so far?
Potato, potato.
Okay. So that just gonna go back here. So Exodus 18 was essentially God helping Moses set up his structure for helping manage the people that were coming out of Egypt. Okay, and I'm going to show you how that ties into our courts today. Okay, now in Numbers 16, God was also helping Moses, and Numbers 16:11 says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that thou may stand there with thee." Okay, so the 70 men plus Moses equals 71. And they call that the Great Sanhedrin. Okay, this is a body that was actually operating for a number of years, several thousand years ago, but is not in effect today right now. Okay. Now, if you do some research on the Sanhedrin, you'll also find that there's a lesser Sanhedrin, which has 23 members. Okay. Does everybody recognize that number?
It sounds like us.
Yeah. Okay, that equals to today's grand juries. Like, we don't have any grand juries in Canada anymore, but down in the States, grand jury is 23 men or women. Okay? In order to get a majority or a quorum out of those 23, you need at least 12 jurors. Well, that's how big our juries are now here in Canada.
Right.
Okay? That's where these numbers are coming from.
12 jurors and then who are the rest of the...
It's all based on biblical. Okay, what's that?
12 jurors, so who are the rest of the 23?
We don't need the 23 because the 12 is the majority.
Oh.
That provides you with a quorum.
It says in the Bible, safety in numbers.
Yes. Okay. And that was first established by King Henry II in 1166, which was also reinforced in the Magna Carta when King John signed that. Okay. Now, we all know about the Magna Carta from when I was talking about it a couple months ago. I'm not going to get back into that. Okay. So when I take all of that, because God created us, we're on top of this structure. Okay. Our authority comes from God. Okay. Where does the court's authority come from? The Queen. Okay. Not from us. The court's authority comes from the Queen. Okay? So what we've been researching is trying to get the people's authority in place, and our authority comes from the Creator. Okay? Now, in that we have the tens, 50s, hundreds, and thousands. Okay? Now, the way this is set up is that we get 10 families together. Okay? And the elders out of each of those families would be designated as part of the jury to resolve any disputes within those 10 families. Okay, that's the tens. Okay.
What about the issues that happen with the Queen's organization?
I'll get to that. Okay. If there's issues between different groups of families, then we need to get together the 50s or the jury for the clans. Where do those jurors come from?
The head of each class.
Yeah, the families that are involved in this. Okay, so do you have somebody, a complete stranger, resolving disputes?
No.
No. Do you have other people interacting with the dispute process? No.
Only
We
the-
resolve our own disputes. Okay? But we ask the elders to participate in that. And so the 12 jurors for the jury comes from the family members that are involved.
Then we can call it court de jour, right?
This is a de jure court. Yeah. Okay? Now when you get an issue that may be amongst different clans, then we can bring together a tribe jury or a grand jury, which is the hundreds. Okay, you kind of see how this is going? And then if this involves the whole nation, then we can put together a Sanhedrin and resolve it for final. Okay, because that's the last level of courts. Now why did I shape it this way?
It's reversed then, reversed from
Yeah, because where's the ultimate authority? The people with the
Yeah.
top. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
with
the
one
top.
person, it's with everybody. Okay, and we use that structure to resolve our own disputes. Okay, does everybody follow me with that?
Seems fair.
Okay. Now, if I was to place it on this graph, that's where it would go. Okay. Keeping in mind that this is on the private side. This is not public. This is between the members of the families that are in dispute. Remember, the Bible also says that we're supposed to resolve our disputes before we get to court, right? So how busy are these courts going to be? They shouldn't be busy at all, should they? Okay. This is also civilian. Okay? Civilian is the opposite of military. A civilian is actually a non-military individual. Okay? Remember that word because we're going to go into it a little bit in a second. Okay? It also supports self-governance. Who's responsible? We are. Okay? And requires that we accept full liability for everything that we do. Now, the thing that you'll notice is that we have two shapes now, okay? I talked about the phallic symbol in my courses. Phallic symbol represents what?
Male.
The masculine energy, right? Okay, what's the masculine energy all about? Well, that's what the symbol is, but what's the energy, the male energy?
Force.
Force, protection, what would be some other good words? Discipline, those kind of things, okay? Providing, okay? What's the opposite of that? What does this represent? Yeah, the womb, okay? The female energy. What does the female energy represent? Nurturing, caring, those kind of female attributes. Okay? Now, the matriarch actually ruled society for many thousands of years until it was conquered by the patriarch. Okay? There are still a few matriarchal groups in the world today. You may find them in the jungles of Africa or South America. Okay? But for the most part, who's ruling today? Patriarch. Okay, it's all about the masculine energy. Now, what I realized when I was putting this together is that if the people stand up and actually start putting their own courts together, we actually have a convergence or a merging of both energies. Okay? And bringing both energies to bear on the problem is actually us bringing the Christ impulse and bringing those energies into balance. Okay, we actually need both energies in order to solve the problem, and it's our job to bring both energies into balance with one another.
Wow.
Okay.
So that's a phallic and a matriarch.
Yeah.
Symbol.
That's a symbol for both, for the balance of power between the matriarch and the patriarch.
But the Rothschilds have that.
I don't care who has it, that's just the the symbolism, and they've taken it for their own perverted purpose. But when you actually take a look at the root symbolism, that's what it stands for.
Huh?
The inverted double triangle could also indicate figure 8 immortality.
Okay. I haven't researched that one, so I don't know. Okay. Now, some of the pros with all of this is that, one, you don't need lawyers. Okay. That way, it's all because of that, and because the people are responsible for providing elders for all of these courts, it's impossible for them to infiltrate or corrupt it.
Yeah.
Okay? If they want to infiltrate and corrupt it, guess what? They're going to have to replace us all. That's the only way. Okay? It's also superior to any of the public courts. So the public courts actually recognize that they have to listen to the courts of the people. And we actually had an example of that from Stan here last week, and I'm going to talk about in a second. Okay? It's very easy to accommodate changes in the population. If you have family groups that are starting to get bigger, then you can just divide them into 2 separate family groups. Or if you find there's some family groups shrinking, you can easily merge them. So it's fairly easy to accommodate changes to make sure that you're maintaining the structure of the family. And also remember that the existing system's trying to destroy the family, right? And there's a reason why they've been trying to destroy it.
Oh, yes.
It's because of exactly this. And it also will bring the public or the military back under civilian control, which is desperately needed right now because we have a patriarchal military society that is out of control completely. Okay? Now the downsides, this requires active participation. We can't just sit in the background and just watch other people do it. We have to participate.
Because you're
No more-
Particularly the elders of the families.
No more TV.
Well, you can still watch TV if you want, but okay. And remember, elder isn't just a male, it's also a female. Okay, the word man applies to both the male and the female. And it's important that both the male and the female participate in this. That way we have both energies going into the system, right?
China goes governed like that.
Requires duty from the elders from each of the families. Okay. And requires regular meetings of the courts. Okay. Even if you don't talk about anything or discuss anything, you have to get together on a regular basis or else compliance starts to set in. And part of the problem. Complacency. Maybe I used the wrong. Yeah, compliance means you're. Yeah, the word I meant was complacency. Thank you. Okay, and this requires a huge responsibility. Okay. But the thing is, I've been trying to talk about personal responsibility and accountability for a couple of years now. So if we're actually going to take responsibility for our lives, is this going to be anything new? Probably not. Will it require lifestyle change? Absolutely. Now, Stan talked about common law courts here last week, and the question I have is, did he participate in a court that actually followed what was in scriptures, or was that court actually what kind of fell under the jurisdiction of the Queen? Okay, the Queen still recognized that it was a superior court, but was it a legitimate scriptural court? A legitimate civilian court? So I thought I'd explore that for a bit. Okay, one thing we know is it worked. It worked really, really well. Okay, so
I'm missing out which court we were talking about here, or which
Stan talked about setting up a court last week,
right,
or the week before, where they got together and they had a jury and they had the table set up and it was videotaped and all that kind of stuff, and they sent out invitations to all the parties to participate. Only one party showed up, so they actually held court, ruled against the parties that didn't show up, filed that with the provincial judge, and the judge ruled that the courts have never overruled a common law court, so he wasn't about to start now. So he actually filed and enforced that judgment.
What was the judgment?
He didn't say.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what the case was or anything like that, but I'm trying to get more information from Stan. I may have to pay him for an hour of his time to get that information,
So
but
he was setting up a de jure court?
he did set up a de jure court.
Like a one-time thing, or?
Yeah, he just did it once. Yep. But it proved that it can be done, that the military courts recognize it, and more importantly, they recognize the authority of it.
Wow. It's higher than.
It's higher than them, so they had to listen. Okay? My only question was it under the Queen or under God? Okay? And I don't have that answer yet. Okay? So yeah, there's my question. Now what I did find is that there is a Common Law Procedure Act of 1856. You can actually download for free. I started reading through it. It's like 1,000 pages, but it's actually an annotated book on this act, so the top of each page has 1 or 2 sections of the act and then a whole explanation on the bottom part of the page, and it goes on and on and on for hundreds and hundreds of pages. This act is still in effect. Okay? I know this because the Supreme Court used it as a reference in one of their cases, which just happened to be the case that I've been using to support my argument that promissory notes is currency. Okay, so this evidence kind of shows me or proves to me that what Stan did actually falls under the jurisdiction of the Queen, which means we have 2 remedies. We can use her common law courts, or we can set up our own courts. Okay. Which means that we could probably use her courts for now until we have all the families put in place so that we can actually start exercising our own courts. So we have something that we can use to step our way through it. Okay.
Question is, if we start
Yes.
establishing a court now under the Queen's authority,
Right.
are we gonna be able to say, okay, done with this, now we're gonna step up?
Okay, so the question was, if we establish a court under the Queen's authority, can we abandon that and go to ours later on? Why not? It's our courts. Okay? The power rests with us, so we decide what we want to do. But the important thing through all this is that, you know, I think we have a remedy now so that we can start dealing with some of the more immediate issues, which buys us some time to get our real courts in place.
Yeah.
Make a treaty with her to protect it?
Well, the treaty will come later. Okay. Now, you guys recognize these words? Okay. Governor General. Okay, I just talked about her. That's on the triangle. Lieutenant Governor, which is the Queen's representative here in Alberta. Solicitor General, Attorney Generals. Okay. We have companies, corporations. We have officers like police officers and peace officers and that kind of stuff. Commissions, admiralty law, those are all basic words that we use every day, right? You guys are so quiet.
So I just wanna ask, what is Receiver General?
Receiver General?
Yeah, like.
The Receiver General is the office that's responsible for
The bankruptcy.
For the trustee for the bankruptcy.
Cause I asked the Bank of Canada, I said that we're not in bankruptcy, but yet we have Receiver General.
Yeah,
So they lied to me into my face?
yep, perhaps.
Great.
That's a first.
What's a receiver?
Never had it
A
before.
receiver is a trustee in bankruptcy.
I know what it is. Wow.
Now, if everybody's seen the occult world of commerce, Jordan Maxwell has it online. Okay, what was his main gist in that video? The words that we use don't necessarily reflect what they actually are. Okay, here's some examples. He's talking about the banks. Okay, so what's a bank? Big building, right? But in reality, we have 2 banks on a river. Okay, banks control the current sea. Okay, they control where the current goes. Okay, and he talks about ships berthing. Okay, and that when a ship berths,
In this canal.
it must go to the doctor or the dock master in order to manifest the products that are brought in the ship.
Shipped.
And humans, or man, is birthed down the birth canal. Okay, you kind of follow the words and how they've kind of twisted it for their own purposes. Okay, everybody.
Put everybody under Admiralty law.
Does everybody understand what I'm getting at? It's
So-
really important you understand this
So
concept.
the doctor gives you a birth certificate.
Right.
The doctor.
Yeah, the dock master gives you a birth certificate.
Yeah.
Okay,
You got it.
because a new vessel has been birthed.
Yeah.
Is he doctoring it?
Does everybody not understand what I just said? Okay.
I don't understand.
The door's right there. Okay, so let's go through these words and let's see if you understand them now. Okay. Governor General. What's a general?
Military.
Military.
Commander.
Okay. Lieutenant. More generals. Okay. What's a company?
Oh.
It's like 4 brigades of man and heavy equipment. That's what a company is. An officer. Okay? The taxpayer is actually an officer who holds an office. If you actually look it up in the Income Tax Act.
I don't have an office.
Okay? And there's many, many officers. If you look through the legislation. Well, yeah, police officers, besides those.
An employee is an officer.
Right, an employee is an officer. Right. Okay. Commission. How many here work for commission? Like they actually get paid a percentage of sales and that kind of stuff? Few people? Okay. Under a social insurance number? So you're actually a commissioned officer.
An NCO. Or a C.
Okay, that's a military term too, commissioned officer. Okay, so even some of the financial terms have military connotations. Okay, and it's all done under Admiralty, which is military. If you watch Winston Strout's video when he was in Kelowna, there was actually a fellow up there explaining the history of the birth certificate and how when you're born the birth certificate's signed and sent to England and all that kind of stuff. One of the scenarios that he talked about in there was that when you turn 18 and you start working under a social insurance number or accept the birth certificate, you're actually accepting being posted at a military post. Okay? And that is evidenced by a name, address, and a date of birth. Because what was birthed? The vessel, right? It's a military vessel. So when you agree to be the legal representative of that military vessel, you agree to be manning that military post.
And the postal code is only required for commercial
Right.
transactions.
Okay? But essentially, at that point, you have a rank of a private. Now, when Stan was here, he was talking about courts, and you remember him talking about the judge being an officer and you being the private when you're in court. Okay, that's why they need the name and birth date, so that they can prove that you're a private in their military. The problem is that all of these documents, whether you're registering property or applying for driver's licenses, a birth certificate, all that kind of stuff, it's all in the public, which means it's all on the military side, and you're holding military offices when you have these documents on your possession. And the probability of you being a private in their military. Technically, you're at war. As long as you're manning a military post, you're at war, which requires you to follow the military code. What's their code? Legislation and regulations. Participation in their courts, because their courts are only military courts. It's all the admiralty. And they require that you submit to their authority. Okay? I talked about nom de gras a few months ago. Okay?
Guerre.
Guerre, is that how it's
Guerre,
pronounced?
we say
Thank
guerre.
you. Nom de guerre.
Nom de la guerre.
Okay. Thank you. Somebody want to say that out loud for the camera so we have it right?
Nom de la
Nom
guerre.
de guerre.
Nom
Okay.
de la guerre.
Anyway, it's French for name of war. Okay? Where are you going to find that? On your driver's licenses. You also find it on court dockets. Okay. Does everybody see the pieces starting to fit in together now?
Except for my
Excuse me, but bring it back. Yeah, I don't know if you know, but we got no driver's license in Alberta.
Okay, operator's permit. Operator's permit, driver's license. I think you understand the intent of what I was trying to get at. Okay.
Comprehended.
I'm gonna give you a boot pretty soon. Okay. And then I thought, well, let me look up the word mark. Okay? And I found that a couple thousand years ago they had a mark of the legion. Okay? Essentially what they did in the Roman days is that they branded or tattooed their legionnaires, their military.
ISQ.
Okay? And around 400 AD, they started branding the workers in their armament factories. Okay? Back then, there was a huge difference between a civilian and a legionnaire, or the military. Okay? Huge difference. Actually, it was the Romans that actually invented the concept of a civilian to make sure that there was a separation between people who were at peace and people who were at war. Okay. And in that same document, it also states that the national mark should be branded onto the arms of these workers in imitation of branding the recruits. So you can see that back then, that's when they started branding the workers and the military. Okay? Now, they don't use brands today. What do they use? Numbers.
RFID chips.
RFID chips. Cards. That kind of stuff. Okay? But we're still branded to identify who the legionnaires are or who the workers are. Okay? Does a civilian have any of that? None of it. Civilian doesn't have any markings. A civilian is neutral. A civilian is at peace. Yes?
It also says in the Bible that those who are engaged in war, in the military, they have no business mingling in the civilian affairs.
Right. And that's supported with, I believe that's my next slide, the Geneva Convention. Okay, the Geneva Convention was signed by 92 countries. Geneva Convention outlines the rules of engagement and also specifies that they are to protect the civilian in and around war zones, and how to treat prisoners of war, and how to treat the injured. Okay, that's all outlined. That's part of their SOP, their standard operating procedure. They have to follow this.
Not anymore.
Why? Why do they not follow it anymore?
No more
Civilian
civilians.
There's no civilians, right? There's no civilians anymore. Why is there no civilians? Because everybody's got birth certificates and all that kind of stuff, okay? Because I asked the question, if the, what's the word? All the militaries like the US and Great Britain, a lot allies, when they attacked Iraq, okay? How many Iraqis got killed? Hundreds of thousands, like I believe the number's over 1 million of them got killed. How can they go in and kill over 1 million Iraqis and not be charged under the Geneva Convention? Because they have to protect the civilians.
They had selected them.
No, they didn't. They didn't have to.
I'm kidding.
Because they're all in the military. They
All
can
those
just
Iraqis were in the military?
sure, because they all have birth certificates and stuff too,
All
right?
registered as
Just
well.
about every country in the world has put birth certificates on all the people. Okay,
Can
so
do
they can
whatever
go in
want.
and they can do whatever they
Yes,
want.
yeah.
Because they're all just casualties of war. It's just war. It's just business. The good news is we have remedy. Okay? There's a thing called provost marshal. Has anybody heard of him? A few people?
They
Okay.
don't do anything.
Oh, yes, they do.
That's actually.
Provost marshal is the head of the military police. Okay? Their job is to make sure that the military is following all the rules, including the Geneva Convention. Okay? That also makes sure that they protect the civilians. Okay? So, because there's no civilians, do they have anybody to protect? Not really. But what if you resigned your commission and actually quit the military to become a civilian?
Wow.
Do you have somebody to protect you? Absolutely, the provost marshal. Okay? In the same Winston Stroud videos, there's actually a fellow that got up and told a personal story where one of his brothers was put into jail down in the States. They called up the provost marshal because he's part of the First Nations nation, and they actually have a treaty directly with Queen Elizabeth I. Okay, so they're not actually a part of all that's going on out there. Okay, they called up the provost marshal. Provost marshal called up the facility where he's being detained and said, "Release him immediately, or we'll come in shooting to save him."
Wasn't that in Saskatchewan?
I thought that was down in the
Manitoba, I
States.
think. No,
Really?
it was.
Saskatchewan.
Okay, wherever. If it was in Canada, even better.
This
Okay?
didn't
no,
make
it wasn't
CBC
the-
news.
And it was a
Okay.
U.S. general that,
Yeah, the U.S. general did it. Yeah.
who
Did
warned
this-
them.
This didn't break CBC news?
Oh, you kidding? No way. Okay. But the
You're
point
surprised.
is, he got released like right away.
In 8 hours.
Okay.
Nice. he's a
So,
guy.
so do you think it works? Yeah, way. Okay.
Should make it work for us.
And we can make it work for us.
But are you saying that if we have a birth certificate, then we don't have access to that?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I believe. You know, like my first slide, you make up your own mind.
So you're not a military officer? You, or?
No, because I gave up all of that. I surrendered all of those documents back to them. I terminated all my contracts. I'm a civilian.
Civilian.
White
So
flag?
only one in this room.
Probably. Somebody else.
Cash
has done.
in your birth certificate?
No, no, I just surrendered it and sent it back. It's a foreign instrument, I don't care about it. It's their fake paperwork anyway. Okay, so there's the Provost Marshal website, okay? Address and phone number is down on the bottom there. So
Where does
well,
he live?
it's just there. You can actually look up Provost Marshal and you can go to the website. It's,
Provost.
you
What does
can
provost
Google
mean?
it, okay?
What does it mean?
Provost?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the definition of provost is. Okay.
Can I just ask a question about what they call the military here?
Canadian Armed
Compared-
Forces?
Well, yeah, they call them that. I mean, why is, we are actually military and they are Canadian Armed Forces different military, or they just don't want us to know we're military? What-
Yeah.
Well, my personal opinion, like I just found this, like I just kind of stumbled onto this in the last couple days.
Wow.
Like I was literally sick to my stomach the last couple days when I found this out. What the truth is, I have no idea. I have a whole bunch of coincidences that support my theory. I personally don't believe in coincidences. You know, this answers a lot of questions that I have, like a lot of questions. It's hidden out right in the open. They're not hiding anything.
Can you expand on some of it that you're saying?
Yeah, like
the coincidences and.
Well, the coincidences
and your
like
questions.
the names of all the offices that they hold, the use of the military terms that I just went through a couple slides ago, the courts and how the courts work, how police officers, they're paramilitary as well, how they're using their authority with seems like no regard for any of our freedoms. Okay, there's just a whole bunch of things going on that just fits this.
So can we send them our birth certificate, these guys?
Well, actually, the group that I'm studying with right now, there's very specific organizations to send these documents to. Like the birth certificate, for example, we actually sent that back to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation because it's the FDIC that actually underwrites all the insurance policies that are against all of these documents. All these documents are evidence of insurance policies, essentially. And so there's a whole process that we go through. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send these guys a notice now. Because I've gone through all of that process, and my next step is to put them on notice that, hey, there's a civilian out here, okay? And I'm putting you on notice that if anything happens, I'm holding you guys responsible. So, you know, if you get a phone call from me, I expect the jets and the helicopters to be flying over me within minutes.
Are you a civilian or something?
What's the difference?
He's
No difference.
You're not that, then you're the civilian, which
He's
is
not
a
a-
sovereign.
He's not
A sovereign
military.
or civilian is completely away from the military or any of those political structures. I will actually start participating in the family structures as outlined in the Bible. I'm just looking for families that want to start helping me build
Right here.
the family structure.
So just watch out for the chemtrails, cause they've been spraying this week.
Yeah, well,
They got the GPS board.
okay.
No chemtrails.
So when it comes down to it,
There is none. I don't see.
okay, when it comes down to it, like Stan proved last week, if we can get these courts set up, they have authority over this military court, and we can actually start providing some remedy to actually start resolving some of the challenges that we're facing in our lives. And if there is a number of individuals here that want to start actively participating and working towards getting this stuff set up, then, you know, please come see me at the break or whatever, and let's get to work. I'm willing to spend time to get this going. If we have immediate needs, let's get a court set up and get some cases going through so that we can get some remedy for people. The challenge that we're going to have with that is that a lot of the people in here know each other's cases, so we're going to have to find jurors that don't know any of the parties so that we can actually have an unbiased jury for resolving these cases. But I think we have a lot of people around that would support that process. But it's going to require time, it's going to require resources and energy to get this stuff set up and make sure that we're doing our due diligence so we do it properly. Because if we don't do it properly, then we're no better than they are.
It's not part of, I guess trying to understand that before you were talking about the people, the clans involved. And even though some people know what's going on with certain people, maybe I misunderstood it.
If we're dealing with, let me just bring this up. If we're dealing in here with just our private matters between clan members,
Yeah.
then that's private. That's just between us.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with them. But if we're dealing with issues in the public, then we better make sure that we have jurors that aren't familiar with the case, so that when we submit that ruling to their judge for them to enforce it, that we followed their rules. They have court procedures that they need to follow, and I think it's appropriate that we follow that so that we don't put them in a position to throw our case out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I require some clarification. Why would we be dealing with public issues?
Because we're all still in the public. We all still have property, we all still have driver's licenses and registration, insurance, and all that kind of stuff. So we still have a tremendous, like,
Well, and we continue to
Almost-
encounter those in the public who make the
Right.
assumption
Right.
that that's who we are.
right. Like when I go home, I have to go through the public in order to get home. I'm still in my private capacity, but I could be interacting with public police officers or other public people, which may need to be resolved.
Gotcha.
Okay? We're not going to get away from the public. We can't live our lives completely in the private. Because anytime you go into a corridor that is a public space, we're in the public in our private capacity. But right now, we're in the public in our public capacity. Huge difference.
Confusing.
Would you,
It's a little bit confusing.
Yes.
you
Or a lot.
may need, would you may need to access the public accounts of these people to obtain your revenue? That may be one reason you have to get them to enforce your judgment.
I disagree.
Oh, I'm asking, I'm not stating.
I don't think we need to play their commercial game or lien them or any of that kind of stuff. We make our rulings and we send it to the judge for enforcement. And so if their law or their rule is, go to jail for 14 years, see ya.
Judge?
Whoever the public official was. If it was a police officer or county clerk or whatever.
Otherwise, there's nobody who really can enforce them, because there's no judgment that can protect themselves in that system.
Just a second, one at a time. Sorry, say it again?
They protect themselves in that system, the court system, always
Yeah.
protect themselves.
Well, it's
There's
the old man's club,
Never
so.
a judgment against a judge or.
Right.
like-
Yeah, they'll protect themselves.
Yeah.
But now they're gonna be held accountable to the people.
Right.
Now they have to follow the rules or else. Right? Larry?
If you're open for questions, I guess you are.
Absolutely, this is, just my brainstorm and if.
So I have a couple points.
Okay.
That I didn't see when you were talking. Number one, I thought about an ecclesiastical court, and I've talked about that several times.
Yep.
That is a court where it was about the priests that they went to. Number two, when you talked about putting a head over every family, that is established in the Bible already. And when Moses appointed these people over the 50s, the 10s, and the 100s, he appointed a person over them. And that's where the ranks came from. And then, if they couldn't solve it, they took it up to the next level and up to the next level, and finally it came to him. And if he couldn't do it, he went to God and got the answer.
Okay.
And that's what the Bible
Well,
says.
if you can provide me with the scripture that would support that, then I would research that myself and.
You just keep reading where you were, then we'll
Okay,
go.
I keep going. I'm telling you, my learning curve's like this right now, but
You'll find it, it's all there.
Okay.
That's the structure, because Moses' father-in-law came to him and said, God put him in charge of all these people, and he was wondering, how is he ever gonna look after them?
Yeah.
He said, well, don't be a fool, you can't handle it all. Appoint this over this, and this over this, and
Yeah.
break it up. And basically, the concept was that one person could judge those matters, but if he couldn't, he would then come up
Yeah.
the rank
Well,
until it came back to Moses.
I'll admit to this group today that the one model that kind of screamed out at me that follows this is what the First Nations have been doing for tens of thousands of years. And that's kind of the model that I was following on how this may look, because it kind of mirrored what my understanding of what the Bible is saying too. Because the First Nations people had elders that sat around and judged their family members, or if there was any issues, the elders helped resolve it, remembering that, one, they had a firm belief that they were not to push their will against anybody else, because that's the root of the problem, right?
Actually, I've been talking with my friends about this. Samuel, the children of Israel had traveling judges. Samuel was the last of them, and he anointed Saul. And God said to the children of Israel, he said, if you anoint a king, you will submit to tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly
1 Samuel 8.
Yeah, and then he went and anointed it. They said, then let that be on our heads. So they wanted to be cool like everybody else, and they wanted to have a king instead of being led by God.
Yeah, and then God warned them what would happen if they had that king.
Yeah. So today we're rejecting the tyranny. I don't want a king. I want the sovereign over my head.
The king.
The God king.
Yeah.
God.
And that's why I put the people right on the top.
Right.
Because there's nobody between the Lord and the people.
Back to Judges, you know.
Well, the judges are all below that.
Samuel was like a respected man that went around judging. He was an elder judging the people.
Can I get a little bit of more clarity on, I like the idea that you're going with the First Nations, because I have a bit of a comprehension of that, about they do believe in the spirit world, that there will be, there's some sort of, something's gonna happen to them if they're not in touch with the truth and God and stuff like that, because way more than any man that I know of or experienced on this lifetime about talking to God. So I would way more appreciate that that would be sort of the First Nations. I don't know anybody who's got a direct connection that talks and hears back from God. Like, how would you ever determine that?
Come and talk to Larry.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, I don't understand.
We all do.
Let me see if I can reiterate your question so I can understand
confusing.
it. If I was to boil down your question, is how do we know we're talking to God?
Well, how do you know that you're gonna choose, or the people will choose a person or whatever that's gotta, that hears God, that.
Well, first off, we all do.
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
secondly, the thing that's so beautiful about this is that this supports, and I think I missed a slide here somewhere. Anyway, this supports diversity. Okay, so would we necessarily have, say, Muslims and Jews and Christians in the same family unit? Probably not, because our belief structures are different.
Absolutely.
Okay. Would we have people that live in northern Canada in the same family group as people that live in, say, the jungles of Africa? Probably not, because the economic and even the ecological challenges are completely different. So why, like today, why do we have people in Ottawa making decisions for people in Alberta? It's completely crazy.
Disconnected.
It's completely disconnected. So this model permits and actually encourages diversity. So people of different faiths and different beliefs and different economic or different ecological or environmental challenges can get together and resolve some of those together in unique family structures. And then as you have other family structures that have similar challenges or experiences, you can then build clans and nations. If you actually find a map of, say, BC or Canada, where they actually have the outlines of all the different languages that the First Nations people spoke, there are literally hundreds of them across the country in different geographic forms based on the language of the time, and each one had different environmental concerns and all that kind of stuff. They managed to set up those nations but still live in relative harmony with each other. And in fact, how the First Nations people dealt with all the different nations that they had was the model that the Founding Fathers used for when they created the Union of the United States of America. Okay, they actually based it on the First Nations people and how they made treaties amongst one another from nation to nation.
It was republic.
The republic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a democracy, it was a republic.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
So, yeah, I don't really know what the question was, I just was sort of
Okay.
reacting. I was sort of reacting, because of what I thought that you were meaning. And I thought, whoa, that would be even more scary than what's in place now.
How would it be more scary?
Like a God man saying, I'm God's
Yeah,
man.
Oh, no,
something
no.
like I'm
Oh,
God's
no, well, this is,
Like
this is
putting
the
an
thing,
Christ rule
this
over
is
everything.
of, you've got one member of a family who gets together with 10 members who have now come from 10 other families. They work as a team. There is no one
There
in
is no
charge
structure.
who makes
Okay,
a final
see, I'm
ruling.
Still thinking that. I'm
No,
still seeing
no, there's
like
no structure.
Somebody at the
So,
top makes
no,
that
no, no.
decision, and they
What-
got
many
direct
people-
connection
no.
to God, and I'm thinking, yeah,
No,
I'll do that.
no. There's no one person at the top.
Yeah.
What it is
Yeah.
10 people sitting around in a circle, and they have to come to a consensus.
Okay,
So
that
that's a
feels better.
council, isn't that a council of
yeah,
elders?
a council of elders
And
would be
then
another word.
each tribe is self-governed.
Right.
Which is beautiful.
That's what it's all about, is self-governance.
Knew I wasn't clear on the
But
question.
a republic,
Does that help?
Yes.
a
Okay.
republic, a republic is the rule of law, God's law. That's
Yeah,
what it
but
is.
our word also makes law, and that's what contracts are all about. Okay, our word makes law.
This hasn't really been mentioned, but another really important aspect, I think, of Aboriginal law and governing is that whenever there is a crime, there's also the recognition that it's not that individual versus the rest.
No, it's a problem of the whole group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an imbalance
Yeah,
somewhere.
because that old adage.
Everybody's responsible.
Right, everybody's responsible, and the old adage, it takes a community to raise a child, right?
So if that child starts stealing, maybe
It's
he's
a
hungry.
community's problem,
Maybe he's
not just.
hungry, right?
Not just that
So nobody's
child.
feeding him or nobody's taking.
Well, whatever
Nobody's
the,
teaching
him.
the reason is.
There's an imbalance that needs to be addressed.
Right.
whatever
There's
it
no
is.
harmony, there's no balance, there's no Christ impulse being applied. Somebody's out of balance and needs to be brought back into balance through tough love or love, you know, because I know that,
But
you know,
it's a
they'll.
group responsibility.
Right.
That's taking
And the group may send that individual out for like a week's vision quest and, you know, go live out in the bush for a week and come back when you've
Ready
got
to
your vision.
appreciate, yeah.
Yeah, so that they can appreciate the value of the community that they got. Yes.
So does this, work for civil matters
Coyotes
only,
treat-
or does it
teach you
also
for a
work
while.
criminal?
Well, you're talking about the public now.
No, I'm talking about this group of elders, because if they,
Well, if it was a tort, for example, if somebody stole or injured somebody or was, you know, having fraudulent contracts, then in my opinion, if they're part of this member family, the member family would get the council of elders together to help resolve the dispute.
They would make a judgment on the case.
As long as it's not in the public.
So
If
what
you're
if-
doing a tort against somebody that's in the public, then that's a different issue.
So what if it was a criminal case, like say an assault or whatever, would you be able to make that apply?
Well, I haven't researched enough to, you know, if somebody tried to assault somebody or kill somebody, you know, would that be up to the elders?
I'll gather around and give them a spank.
You know, I don't have an answer to that. Like, I've just been, you know, this is 2 days of research and I'm trying to come to terms with what this really means. I don't have all the answers, okay, and I will never pretend to have all the answers, and that's why I'm looking for other individuals so we can start working on this and get something up, so we can, yeah, set up a council to figure this out.
Fair enough, but maybe while you're looking, that might be a thing that you might.
Or because this is the mother, maybe we need to send it to dad to get him to resolve the issue. You hear what I'm saying? You know, if somebody tries to kill somebody, you know what? Go see your dad.
Right.
Go to the military court.
Yeah,
Wait
go to the
till your
military
dad
court and
gets
let the
home.
military take care of it.
Because you're not trying to take over the
Absolutely
responsibility
not.
of the courts
No
now.
way.
You don't want to be dealing with a bunch of, sorry, anybody who's whatever, a bunch of criminals,
We-
and deal with it outside of that. That's
No,
not
we,
what
we
we're
can't get rid of it
understanding.
because we need it. We need that male energy. We need those courts. Because there's some things that the feminine can't deal with.
Right.
Because you have to get dad to do it. But there's some things dad can't take care of, so we need mom to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Right?
Maybe
And-
maybe it's baby steps, maybe it's.
Yeah, it's gonna take some time to figure that
Maybe it's a
out.
selective few.
There has been precedent set in Canada and different case law that has recognized that the First Nations system, whatever you wanna call it, has overturned rulings for various crimes that their members were charged in public.
Okay.
And the First Nations group took it back and said, no, we will deal with our person in our ways, and you have no jurisdiction over our people. And the government or the public law had no force over them.
If you can find those case laws, that would be fantastic. Or if somebody can find
Is
it.
he going,
It,
John?
didn't it happen here about 2 years ago, one of the, I think it was even in Alberta that happened, that there was some type of, deal, and the First Nation says, no, this is our problem, and we're gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
And it was like, the council had, and it's just happened here,
Yeah.
about maybe 3 years at the most.
Well, I know that they've been setting up First Nations courts.
Yvonne Johnson case, she's the only Canadian woman that's ever been charged or sentenced to life imprisonment for murder. And she did start spending some of that time in the Ontario prison for women. It's just horrible. But then at some point she was relocated to I don't know what it's called, but an Aboriginal facility where, and then she has been released, and that did happen a couple of years ago, and it is in Edmonton.
Okay.
It's on the news here.
I know it happened here, not
Yvonne
long.
Johnson and Rudy or Ruby
There's multiple.
helped her write her story.
Okay.
So the precedent is out there.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's there. It's just a matter of resurrecting it and actually getting it going. Okay. Any other questions? I know I dumped a truck on you tonight.
When do
but-
we start?
You know what? Come see me at the break. Let's get a list. Let's get some guys together and let's get started. Because the solution isn't out there.
No.
It's in here.
Yeah.
So let's get to work.
But your thing about the military, police, and civilian, like when I was about 17, we were walking into a restaurant and me and a couple of friends got assaulted by a bunch of military guys, and they were drinking and they wanted to push the weight around or whatever. We didn't really do anything. They just wanted to practice their stuff, right? So police got called. They got arrested. As soon as the police found out they were military, they phoned in the military police and they said, you have no jurisdiction over them. We're leaving for Cyprus tomorrow. And they knew it. They knew because they were going to Cyprus that they could cause whatever